Brandon, thanks for coming on Guy Talk. I really appreciate you coming on and the few minutes we had here to kind of like work out what we're going to talk about. We come from different worlds as we just identified, but I think there's still a lot of things in common. Um, you are a very successful businessman. You obviously reading through your stuff. You sold a business and then bought it back from investors.
Well, I actually yeah, we could talk about that story. They closed it down and then I bought it back because they thought the internet was going away in 2001, which amazing guy. It didn't go away. It still
So,
exists.
with that kind of perspective, how did you become so successful?
Well, first of all, I want to tell all listeners that I have failed more than I've been successful. So, I think all the failures added up to being able to get successful. But I think there's just been the the inherent trait that I have, however I got it, was that I'm willing to go through several waves of pain and realize that that first and second wave of pain hurts, but it will not kill you. And I also would say that my overall life philosophy has been I believe I can do the things I'm not sure I can do, which inherently doesn't make sense. But there's just this belief that if I take that next step, it'll give me more data and then I'll be able to figure out something along the way. And whatever 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 trait, gene, maybe it's from my mom or my dad or my grandparents or whoever. Um, that's just sort of what I would say. And probably, if we're just being honest, probably I always say I think I have this guardian angel that just
Yeah,
watches over, which is hard to replicate for a listener. But I would say that it is there for everybody if you recognize it.
yeah, I believe that too. You know, when I made sergeant major, I would think I was 34 years old.
Young,
Yeah, I'm 37 now.
you look it.
Uh, thank you. You're very kind. Too kind actually, but I was 37 and my mother said, or 34, and my mother said to me like, "I'm very proud of you, blah blah blah," and I know you did things. I said, "Nah," I said, "I got to tell you, Mom, I think I was lucky." And she was like, and I said, "It's not false modesty. Um, there were people out there that saw something and took that and tried to groom me." I said, "Where I was smart, I listened, and that was it." And I
Yeah,
think that's
I think that's a really good point. I actually wrote an article on that, and how I would articulate that is you need to be coachable. And my mom saved everything, and I used to go to Pele soccer camp,
mm,
and the story is that I was a very good soccer player, but I went to Pele soccer camp, and there was these kids from all over the world that were exceptional. I mean, just just way beyond my talent at the time, coming from growing up on a farm and living out in the country in Maryland and playing, Jarrettsville soccer. But the coach for the All-Star game picked me. And well, at first he didn't. He They picked the team and I was going to play the second the game for the people who didn't get picked for the All-Star team. And he started yelling at me. And he's like, "Brendan White, come here, come here." And I was like, "Man, I didn't get picked." He's like, "Oh, you're playing in the All-Star game." And then they do this assessment, which you probably remember if you went to camp, they rate you and all these things. And in the
sure.
and in the section of the comments, he said, "You're the most coachable student I have ever met. Your life will be successful." And now reading that, I'm like, yeah, like I am definitely a type A. I definitely have my own opinions, but I also wanna be around people who are smarter than me, and when I know that they are, I just I just wanna learn and I'll listen. And, sometimes that's good and bad because people don't expect you to actually listen. And
Right.
but if you're coachable and you can distinguish between the BS people and the actual people who have done it, who are giving you advice, I think that's probably one of the most valuable skills that you can learn because and it's hard. because you have to set your ego aside to be able to do
Right.
that.
And with in my world, a lot of times we had a lot of type A's as well, and the everybody wanted to give their opinion, and it was the right opinion. And my philosophy was you got two eyes, two ears, and one mouth. If you use them in proportion, you might learn something. And it worked for a lot, I think, and probably some of them that didn't take that advice, but. It also helped me evaluate them if they were willing to listen. And then I like what happened to me would then take them and start grooming them. And I think that's probably, I guess that's part of leadership because you want to develop the next leaders that are coming behind you, the next entrepreneurs that come in behind you. And I think that's something that maybe we have in common.
Yeah, I think you're basically unpacking the answer that I couldn't come up with on the spot, because I think the other part of that is that you have to be willing to put yourself in situations where people are just smarter than you, and a
Yeah.
lot of people can't do that, and I've see that. I mean, I've had the opportunity to work in the Defense Department, military, United States, and intelligence space, and but bridging that gap also into business, you can see the people who can't do that because they micromanage,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not, someone could say, "Well, that's a control issue." That's an insecurity issue
Mm-hmm.
because they, or they think they can do it better, or they actually can't hire the people who are better than them, which inherently makes them micromanage because they know the people that they've hired or brought on board or the battalion or whatever it is actually aren't as good. And I think that's, it's almost, I think, Guy, that a lot of things in life self we create the problem. It's already hard enough, but then we make it harder on ourselves
Right, right,
by
right.
not being able to get over ourselves.
Long ago, I ran a scuba detachment for a Special Forces A team, and I was put in charge of doing a rubber duck, which I really didn't have a whole lot of experience at. So I went down to visit my web feed friend down at Norfolk, and got some help from them, and was not too proud to go in and say, well, I haven't done a whole lot of this, and I could use some of your expertise, and got it, and was micromanaging things, as you just said, and a mentor of mine came over and says, "Guy, you can't do it all." I said, "I'm not doing it all." He says, "You're doing it all. You can't do it all. Start passing out those tasks, and you become the orchestrator, and watch who's doing the task." And that was a big part of my learning experience too, because I was micromanaging, and it wasn't. I don't think it was insecurity. I think it was just making sure that it had to be right. But I didn't understand that my role now was not to make sure that every little detail was exact. My job now was to pick the right people to do those jobs, trust them, oversee that, and let it flow. And that came on to be a much greater skill to learn and to try to master.
Yeah, and I think you don't want people to make mistakes. So, and in a leadership role, you have to allow people to make mistakes. I within the last few years, I hired this lady, and I put her in a position higher than what people thought she should have, but I saw the talent, and you have to be able to recognize that talent, and there's a lot of fire and energy in this lady, and you know sometimes you can break things like that, but if you can give those people the opportunity and sit back and just make sure that there's no catastrophic failures,
Right.
then you're gonna build a winning team. And I got a lot of flack for that in the beginning, but it turns out it worked. But it will only work if you have, to your point, the right person who's not going to keep hammering them and is going to allow them to make micro mistakes.
Right.
Because, and the only way that I really learned that, Guy, is I had a lot of people help me in life that didn't need to help me. And with that, I learned, eventually you get old enough. I think, I don't know what you think, Guy, but like your late 30s, you live long enough to sort of see two cycles in the world and life and relationships and everything. And I started to recognize the mistakes I was making. And then you get smarter because you start self correcting. And
And you're not wasting time repairing everything that you broke. Uh,
exactly,
when you said earlier about uh, that to be in the presence of people that are smarter than you or better than you at some task or job or something. I always related that to like playing sports. If I wanted to get better at playing basketball or soccer, I wasn't a soccer player. I was American football and baseball. You play with people that were better than you, and you learn from them. It might take somebody like blocking your shot and driving it back into your face, but you're going to make sure it doesn't happen again. And you're trying not to let it happen again. I think that's kind of some of the similarities there as well, but just in a different field.
well, I think the military teaches it quite well, and and coaches get praised for it. But in the military, you're in a unit, whether you're special forces or you're in the big army or the big navy or whatever it is, you're in a team,
Right.
and you rely on that other person, and you can't worry about what what they're doing. You have to trust that they're going to do it. And the stakes are higher because your life's on the line most of the time when you're doing that stuff. But I think that's a type of discipline that carries over and can carry over, or that civilians can learn and actually just be better. Who was it? Coach Belichick at New England Patriots. That he's famous for always saying, "Just do your position's job. Don't worry about the other person." Um, and that takes a lot of trust. But when it happens, you win 7 Super Bowls or whatever, one,
Right.
11, whatever it is,
It
and
doesn't hurt to have the goat either.
no, it doesn't. But he same sort of principle, right?
Right.
What his mantra was. So
You know, to expand a little bit more, when you were talking about being on a small team or in big army or big navy or whatever, I'm sure in business, the smaller it gets, that wheel turns, and if the business is turning fine, and if it's a big business, um, I guess that somebody doesn't do something, you have a little bump. But if you're on a small team and that wheel's supposed to turn and something that person doesn't do it, that bump is a lot bigger. So the smaller it gets, the greater the impact of the effects of somebody not doing their job.
yeah, I think you're exactly right, Guy. And most of my career has been in startups, so smaller teams. Not I've worked in big companies, but the smaller teams are where that happens. It happened yesterday to us. We're actually doing a dog treat company, and the guy didn't have time to bake this recipe that we need to test. Well, you know, done baked the recipe. I can't call the guy with the machine to figure out if that dough is going to work, which
Right.
now, just it doesn't put us back one day, puts us back days.
Right.
And he didn't let anybody down. Life happens, and that's the way it works. But just to illustrate your point, because it came to mind, because I sent him a text this morning, I was like, "Hey, you gonna be able to bake that recipe for us today?" That's the type of stuff in small teams where it becomes very apparent, and I think that's why in startups you're initially hiring for talent, or you're hiring all around people, not necessarily specialty people right out of the gate, because you got to do 10 things at once.
Right. And they have to be done fairly well in the process too. I mean, especially on the again, I'm only going back to what I know with small teams, and I think the concept, I think it does transcend into business. I have done some business stuff, but I did business stuff with kind of high end security assessment work and stuff. Did it uh, in Africa primarily. I did some in Asia. Um, I worked with Blackwater. Matter of fact, Marty's the one who brought me in to help with that. Uh, but so I, but when I left there, I was taking my own company and bringing in talent and assigning those duties, responsibilities in fields that they could excel in. You wanted to set it up for them to win. Not always, it didn't always happen. Sometimes there was folks that thought that they were a little bit more than they were, and sometimes I made that mistake as well. But you learn, and you move forward. Just make sure that you get the job done, and eventually it does get done.
Yeah, I think that, Marty, whether you're in special forces or you're an Olympic athlete, the the traits are generally the same. It, and whether that's coachable and not giving up and being persistent and having some level of discipline and also a vision of the future, not just immediate gratification and some dopamine hit, which is hard in today's world with all the manufactured dopamine hits that you can get on that phone. I think all those people, and I've had the opportunity to be exposed to many of them. I was recently a lady that I had had on my show had recently won the 2 gold medals in the last Olympics in cycling, and
Wow.
I had her on the show on my show years ago because she was a local rider and she had a really good story. Basically, picked up biking and then was on the pro circuit in like 3 years. Guy, like that just doesn't happen. You don't take a
He's
course
a
in New York Central Park on bike riding and then become a pro in 3 years. Like
right.
that's generally hard. But she was riding down the coast. I live in Northern California, and she sent a note out that she was gonna ride from San Francisco to Santa Barbara over 3 days, and if people wanted to join, to send her a note. So I sent her a text, and I was like, "Hey," and she sent me her GPS, and I said, "Hey, I'll meet you up on this day," and she showed up with 2 other world champions, women, and we rode, and I that ride still motivates me today. I'm training to ride all the stages of the Tour de France in 2027, which is pretty hard for a non-professional, especially someone over 40. But um, it reminded me of just that level of excellence of and focus of what it takes. And I think that those are sort of the traits, they're universal across everything if you look at people who are truly great at what they do.
Well, I heard that you were training for that, which I thought was remarkable.
Well, we'll
But I
see.
got to ask, you rode with a world champ, and they had two other world champs with it. Was it humbling or was it inspiring?
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, it was humbling enough that I kept up with them. Now these are younger people that are pros. One is the mountain bike world championship lady. The other is the ultra distance world champion, and she is, I think, setting out in like 2 months to set the Guinness Book of World Record on riding around the world. She already has done that. So this is not amateur hour here.
Right. Sure. Yeah.
Um, so we're riding up the hill, and I was like, "Hey, lady, it's been fun. Thanks for inviting me. I'm going to drop back." And one lady, mountain bike champion, looks back and she says, "You're doing great, Brandon. Just stick with us." I was like, "Hey, look, like we are literally going up this 9% grade at
Wow.
19 or 20 miles an hour." I was like, "I'm older than you all. My heart's at 180. I am not really in shape yet, and I'm trying not to die. So see you down the coast." So yeah, it's humbling, and I like to put myself in that situation because it really raises the bar
Yeah.
higher, and it unlocks. If anything, it does is I don't think in life you want to try to be that other person, but I think being around those people shows you what's possible, and that what's possible unlocks things in yourself that whatever was blocking it, whether that's mental or whatever it is, and it just unlocks it and it happens. So I think, yeah, when you said, is it inspiring? Yeah, of course it is. Like, you have this lady who won 2 world 2 gold medals. Oh, and by the way, she was the alternate guy. She wasn't even supposed to be in the Olympics and wins 2 golds. She just
Really?
won 2 the other day in the Pan America Games. But I guess my point is it is inspiring, but it's humbling and it unlocks that next level. So, the next week I jumped things up and I rode 250 miles that week, which is a big jump for me back to from the, 150. Doesn't sound like a lot, but an extra 100 miles in a week
Uh,
is a lot.
I've done a couple of 50-mile bike races, but they were basically raced from one bar to the next, and it was for cancer. It took me all day, and it was I was humbled and inspired by it. But with 250 miles in a week, you're doing what, 50 miles a day or better?
Yeah, my loop like today after we record, I'll do 50. I can do 50 with 3,400 feet of climbing in like it just depends. If I feel okay, I can do it in 305. If I'm really, really going fast on my own, I can do it in under 3 hours, which is pretty fast. I mean, we have a headwind here on the coast all the time out of the
Right.
northwest, so half the ride is just mentally challenging, but it's fun. And to be honest with you, you get a lot of thinking done on your in these
Yeah.
types of physical activities, and a lot of my best
And the
ideas are on the bike.
isolation, not having a phone, not having a computer or a podcast, just get out and think and roll. I can imagine it would probably be pretty good. What other projects do you have going?
Well, I'm doing that, so that's turned out to be 20 hours a week. But in my day job, I'm working on a dog treat company, and I have a software company that is a relationship management tool that I've wanted to build for a really long time, and didn't and started to build it, and then it got my one company got turned into intelligence product, and that sort of went its own way. But and I do podcasts. I enjoy meeting people and talking to people. So right now I'm um, 3 things really is the dog treat company, the software company, and training to see if I can pull this off in 2027 without blowing my heart up.
So when is what time of year are you going to be over there? Is it before or after the Tour de France?
It's actually it'll be during the tour in 2027, all goes well for me, and it's an official program, and you ride the stage the day before the pros do. So
Oh,
you
you're
ride the
one day.
exact same course. It's all, you know, uh, uh, I guess blocked off, and you get to do it. The hard part about this ride isn't the daily. It's not. I could go out and ride 100 miles today. That's not the challenge. The challenge is that you're doing that back to back to back to back to back with only 2 rest
Right.
days over 20 plus days, and that I did 50 miles a day 4 times a week ago. It's 4 days in a row, also doing a sauna afterwards for 20 minutes at 200 degrees, and by day 5, I was pretty exhausted.
Wow. And the Tour de France, I don't know the legs between each day. Is it close to 50 miles
Oh, no, each day could be anywhere from, 100 to 170 miles
a day?
a day
Well, I guess you got your work cut out for you,
with
Brandon.
climbing. So
Right.
you could do a 100-mile day that's 16,000 feet of climbing. That's a lot of climbing.
It sure the heck is. It
Yeah.
sure the heck
So we'll
is.
see. I don't know. It's something to do, and it's something that if I do pull it off, it'll be cool.
It'd be very cool. That's quite a challenge you set for yourself, and certainly not throwing stones at my age, but for 50, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we'll see. I think the one thing I live in the San Francisco Bay Area Peninsula, and I tell people, "Guy, the bar out here is so high on on business, on just achieving your best self." And to put this into perspective for you, a lot of bike riders out here that on the East Coast, people play golf mostly. I'm not saying there's not bike riders. Obviously, there's bike riders. I'm from Maryland originally, and I rode my bike out there. But on the West Coast, Northern California, and even some Southern California, a lot of people ride their bikes instead of playing golf. And there is a challenge each year to raise money for this for or rehabilitation program for people, and it is a 7-mile hill. It's called Tanitas Creek. It's in Northern California here, and it is 7 miles and give or take 2,000 feet of climbing. And it's got some steep sections, and it's every year they have age groups, and fastest person, gets name on plaque. There is an age category for 90 plus with a person. So, like, when you're in that environment, which I know
Right.
you've been in the military, that brings out the best in you, and
Sure.
also eliminates any excuses of, "I'm too old, I'm too tired, my body doesn't work." Like, I got news for you. There's people doing it, and when you see it, it just
More
changes your
inspiration.
your whole perspective.
Yeah, it's inspiration. Yeah, for sure. And, the boo boos, everybody's got boo boos. Keep moving forward. Keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, you
But
need to be smart about, and
sure.
to be the truth is I started training for this last year, and I just went out too hard. I've had 3 ACL reconstructions, and needless to say that my knee is, not a perfect knee by any means, and I just overdid it, and, I needed to back off, and mainly because I didn't ride. I usually ride 7,000 plus miles a year, but last year with work and everything, I only got a few thousand, and so, sometimes you make that mistake. I don't want any listener to think that I am some guy who's been able to be successful all the time. Like, I have failed way more times than I've been successful.
And sometimes I mean, it's always smart to be, it's always smart to be smarter than the injury too, not to push through it all the time. There's times when you have to push through it. Um, but if you're training for something like that, you got to know when to say, okay, I got to back off a little bit. And that's
And
being smart.
and it's been a good learning experience to honestly, because in most of my life, even yeah, you build a business, you're looking at 5 years out or 2 years out, but in all of my sports things, I've always had near term, whether if I was training for a big ride, that would be 6 months out, 7 months out. This is the first time where I'm, a year plus out because that's what it takes.
Right.
And it really gives you perspective when you start thinking about people when we just saw the Winter Olympics. These people in the Winter Olympics been training 4 years to get to that day. 4 years. Like, every day 4 years. I mean, that's that's it's a different mindset.
Level, yeah. And they have the best biometrics people out there working with them, with physical therapy and everything else, getting them to that point. I'm from around the same area you were when you grew up. I'm from Wilmington, Delaware,
Oh, cool.
originally. So you're right down the street from me. We would run. I would do a lot of running. We ran half marathons. Philadelphia half distance run was one that we did as a team. Actually, we would all go up there and then we'd all train in secret for like 6 months. Are you running? No, no, we're not doing any of that. But we were all. I think my best time on that was an hour and 31 minutes.
Wow.
So I was in pretty good shape at that time. Those days aren't with the boo boos are not around it like that anymore. But we would all train in secret and go up there. But it wasn't for any year. We always stayed in some kind of uh, in some shape that where you could, if you had to deploy, you would be ready in within 2 weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, with a serious tune-up. But for an event like what you're talking about, it was about 6 months we started training out. But for this new event that you're talking, this Tour de France, uh, yeah, I suspect you would need at least a year and a half to
Yeah,
get
and it's
ready.
just a different mindset because and then you think about these Olympians who are and these other people who are doing this for this long-term goal. It's just it's very different. It's also I wouldn't say it's easier, but it does allow you to be a little easier on yourself. Last week, I was riding with a friend, and I told him we ride together every week, and I was like, "Hey, we gotta do 50 today." And he's like, "I'll be there at 9, blah, blah, blah." And then we get, like, 3 miles down the road. He's like, "I got some bad news." And I was like, "What's the bad news?" He's like, "Well, I can't ride 50. I can only do 40." And I was like, "Probably would have been better to text me this morning so that I could have ridden before we rode so that I would get it
Right.
in." And that pressure for me, I think, comes from those shorter durations. And then I was like, "Well, this week I'm off by 10 miles over 18 months. It's just not statistically significant, right?" Like, it it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you're letting yourself off the hook. It just means that you have a longer opportunity to make that up and get it back without just killing yourself. So, it's just been a
So, and if
different mindset. It's been fun to learn something new.
and if something like that happens closer to game day, you could always do that 10 miles at the end
Oh,
too.
I would just ride if it was yeah, it'd be non-negotiable, and I wouldn't ride it at the end. I'd be like, "Hey, you can turn off here. I gotta keep going." So,
Right.
you do have to know that, but I'm just saying it does allow you to it's a different mindset in that sense that
Right.
you need to be consistent, and you need to be consistent being consistent, and you need to make those weekly, monthly progress, but it's not really weekly progress, it's really a monthly progress thing that you're looking at, so you have that 4 weeks or 4.5 weeks, whatever the month is, to figure out how you're gonna get there. So, I don't know, it's learning something new, and I will tell you, it is hard. I mean, you try to do back to back. It's one thing to do a big ride. Big rides are hard, centuries are hard, all that. It's another thing to just continually daily do that and see how your body reacts.
Now, I've watched the several episodes or days of the Tour de France, and it gets a little competitive in there with the elbowing. Are you anticipating that as well with,
No, I'm not riding with I imagine we're all well, I know we're not pros who are riding, and there's only a handful of people who I think have really ever done this, but this is this is simply a complete the task, not
an
race. I'm
individual
sure some people will race. I am I've got my own plan to, just to finish this thing because just finishing it, I don't yeah, they're not gonna be rubbing elbows and trying to race to the line. I'm just gonna try to get to dinner every night early so I can get some sleep and get up the next day and ride again.
So at 150 to 170 miles a day, you're looking at 9 hours of
Yeah,
riding, maybe.
maybe more. I mean, that's the
Or-
big threat here is that the time that you're on the course too long because you then don't get your rest, and if you try to do that over, you know, 4 days, 5 d you could probably grit through it for 7 days. Probably, if you're just mentally tough that way and you use Advil and maybe something else, but after that, your body's gonna catch up with you,
yeah,
and I think
starts to fail.
that's the real challenge here. It's just not as simple as can you ride the day, it's can you ride it at the pace that you need, so
I a similar story. I was going through a recondo school, and we were going for a run. We were doing 4 mile runs with all the gear, and they were runs. They weren't airborne shuffles. And we made the turn at the 2 mile. Turned around. I came off, fell off the side, got bumped, hit my head off a log, and I could see them running down 5 o'clock in the morning. They're heading down the trail, and I knew I had to catch up with them because if I didn't, I'd be in that pit in the middle at midnight doing midnight PT because I was too weak to make that run, and I knew I couldn't survive if I didn't make that run. So I caught that group, but one of the ranger instructors was hiding in the bush and saw me running up from the rear, grabbed me, pulled me to the side, and dressed me down. And as he was yelling at me, "You were cheating! You were cheating!" And I was like, "I wasn't cheating. I fell back there." And he was like, "You were cheating!" And I said, "Look at my head," and it was bleeding. He goes, "Oh, okay, well, I'm not going to give you -10, but you're going in the pit tonight." And I was like, "Give me the -10. Let me sleep." And he wasn't negotiating with that. So, but I understand that philosophy that you're talking about. Once your body starts falling apart, it's hard to hold it together, especially for an endurance event like what you're about to do.
yeah, it's been fun trying to figure it out. I used to eat Twinkies on my longer rides because it's just pure sugar, and I love Twinkies, but, I've figured out that I can't eat Twinkies. Like that is not sustainable. Even riding it will spike your insulin level. So I've now switched, of all things, Guy, to sourdough bread and a Coke,
Yeah.
and it has worked better. And you just start learning all these things about your body. Like after 80 miles, which I do know from doing long rides, but when you're repetitively doing it, you learn it. Your body starts to process nutrients different because it thinks it's dying, basically.
Huh.
So you have to train your body to be able to take in 90 grams or whatever it is of carbs an hour. Or yeah, no, it's way more than that. I think it's 90. Anyway, um, you got to train your body, and you start to see how your body reacts to these differences. So that's been fun, and it's sort of like you get to know yourself that you didn't know. The mental part isn't really hard. I don't want to say it's not hard. I'm good at the mental part, just breaking down. Okay, I'm going to do this next 7 mile stretch. I don't care what happens. And then I mean, you know this from military training, is
Sure.
break down these small goals to get to that end goal. That's not hard for me. It's not hard for. I say it's not hard. I can deal with riding into a 20-mile-an-hour headwind for 2 hours. Like mentally, that's not the part. That's all great, but if your body isn't fueled right, you can't mentally. I hesitate to say that. You really can't on a regular basis mentally control that body to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to manufacture glucose for my muscles. I mean,
Right. But
there's
you got to feed
limitations
the
there.
machine. You
Yeah,
have
and
to
you have to
feed.
experiment because your machine is different than my machine.
Right.
So you've got to also, this goes back to sort of tying it into what how you can become a peak performer or be successful, is you actually have to listen to your body. You actually have to like really listen to it. You have to, it's not just going to scream at you. You've got to do the analysis. So it's been interesting, but I think that's probably just an analysis of life, that you have to be willing to look at what you're doing and be fair to yourself and critical, and say, hey, what's working, what's not, and listening to how your life is unfolding. Some people just don't want to accept that. And if you don't accept that, you're going to wind up in a bad spot.
Yeah. It, now again, going back with the comparisons, when I was in scuba school, we were told, they would run you into the dirt, PT you to death, and then run you to breakfast. And meanwhile, it's like 90 degrees out. So by the time you sit down at that table, you don't want to eat that greasy bacon. There's greasy eggs and there's hash browns and all. But you know that if you don't feed the machine's going to fail you. Now, what you're talking about is at a different level. How much you should be absorbing and what I just needed to put fuel in there. But
Right.
it's a kind of at a different level. But I understand the concept. I understand that
Well,
concept.
and
So
it's not that the military, I've been honored enough to work in those tier one units, and they do know that, as you know, their kitchens are different than
yeah,
other kitchens. That's what I'll leave it at. But the cafeterias are very, very different, and they understand that, because the truth of the matter is like I said, it's really no different. In those levels where you're a professional athlete. I mean, make no mistake, that you're a professional athlete. So sort of takes that. But I think when you're starting out there, I do understand that you just got to eat what they give you, because if you don't eat it, eventually you're going to run out of fat in your body, and then you're
right.
toast.
You need coal. You got to keep throwing that coal in the fire. Keep it going.
You do.
And for
I
what
have
you're
a,
about to do,
right before this interview, before we jumped on here to record, I was like, oh man, I got to go and I got to eat again, because I got to get 1 gram of protein for every pound of body weight, which for me right now is about 150. So 150 protein isn't terribly easy to get to every day. I mean, you got you can get to it, but you've got to be disciplined every meal. So I couldn't meet. So I had to eat 14 shrimp before I jumped on here, which was 44 grams of protein.
holy smokes. Well, I had a cheesesteak and
Oh, that sounds so good, but I know that I can't have
sorry, I
it.
didn't mean to torture you, but
Now you are torturing me. I have to fuel myself, and I'm trying to get down to my race weight is probably 145, 147. So it's very hard to lose weight and fuel yourself and
Yeah.
get sleep. It's been I'm decent at it, but it just takes discipline. And some nights I'm just like, God, I just don't want to eat anymore.
Is the weight reduction for aerodynamics as well as just carrying that extra weight up a hill, or is that the principle behind it?
Yeah, the principle is just power to weight ratio. So if you're obviously if you weigh less, and if you look at biker, I am not going to do what professional bikers do. If you look at the top of their bodies, look like skeletons. I'm not going to give up all that. And I back when I was riding and racing, I know, sort of where I am, but it's really just for me, it's a body fat thing. So I need to be 10% or less to, and if I do that, then my power to rate ratio is higher. And to your point, it's just a mathematical equation. If you're
Right.
pushing 200 watts at 155 and you're pushing 200 watts at 150 over 8 hours, you do the math. That could
Right.
be that could be miles and miles per hour that you're getting efficiency. So
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. The So this happens next year. Will this be televised? Will there be a way to follow this?
no,
No.
I probably will not. I mean, I'm an amateur, so that all the pros, yeah, you can follow that.
Yeah,
But
everybody's
like the
following
day
that one.
the day before, probably much like you guys are a bunch of pack fodders. Like, but
Get
but
out of the way.
but I will. I'll put something online. I'm on Strava. Strava is a big an app that most bicyclists and runners use these days. So, and then there is a live application, whether that's Garmin or something else that I can use that people could follow if people wanted to do that.
Well, now that I met you, I'm curious now, and we talked about this. I'm curious to see how all that preparation and all that science that's flicking around in your brain is going to apply to going up and down those mountains.
Yeah, I don't. I just got to get there. I haven't made it yet. What month is it? March. So I'm doing decent. I'm where I should be. I'm about 600 miles, give or take, a month right now, and that needs to ramp up significantly. Which it will. But yeah, but it'll be fun. I'll make it one way or the other.
I'm looking at your bio, and from what I see on your bio, my money's on you.
Yeah, I tend not to quit. I think we talked about this a little bit before we jumped on, but
Yeah.
um, quitting is not. And I don't want anybody listening to think that there's not times when you should quit because it's the right thing to do. But I don't quit when it just because my mind says don't do it. I don't. It never really. Not I wouldn't say that. There have been times when I've gotten flat sky, like I was doing a big ride. It's like 125 miles up 16,000 feet of climbing, and it's called Death Ride. And I think it's now like 1,400 or 14,500. They did something on the new route, but nonetheless, you have to start at like 5 in the morning. It was super cold, and I get cold really easily. And I took off down this hill small hill, and the bike started shaking. And I was
Huh.
like, "Oh my god." Like, my bike is fine. What is going on? Like, did I lose a spoke or do I have a flat? And then that was in my mind. I was like, "Oh man, if I have a flat or my rim's bad, I'm done. I'm going home. Thank God." Turns out I was shaking and the bike was shaking because I was shivering.
Because you're shivering.
Yeah, but there have been times when I'm like, "Oh, man, I wish this thing, like, just get a flat here for a minute to give me a break, or maybe my tube won't work and I'll have to call the
Maybe
Sagwagon,"
you
but
had
I've
to
never done that.
increase the BTU a little bit. You know?
Yeah, I don't know what I just get yeah, so but, I mean, those thoughts are gonna go I'm not saying that those thoughts don't go through your head, but, you just gotta fight through them. And if you do that, I think there's a whole world. What do they say? Most people quit when they're almost like, they can't see the finish line, but if you're zoomed out looking on that person, they're so close to that goal, and then they give up, and then, that becomes this fulfilling prophecy that just is a bad thing to create in your
Well,
mind.
to share a saying that instructors that I had would say is, just when you think you're dead, you're only halfway there.
Yeah, it's the truth though, right? I mean, those are the
Yep.
three waves that you go through before, and I don't know whether it's 3 or 4, you probably know more than I do, but there's definitely a few waves that you need to push through, and if you do push through them, 'em, you're like, "Oh, man, what have I been missing my whole life?"
Yeah. I really enjoyed this conversation with you, Brandon. I tell you, when I got this, I told you I was a little apprehensive. I was like, oh my God, what do I have in common with this guy? And turns out we do have some things in common, which was I said to the assignment guy, I said, I'm going to learn something with this, and I think I did.
Yeah, likewise. Well, I'm really grateful that for you having me on. It's been a fun conversation. It's been good to get to know you.
Yeah, it's good to great to know you, and I'm going to try to follow you in that race,
All right,
and
man.
because I believe in you. I think you'll do it.
We're gonna give it a good shot. Thanks a lot, guy.
All right, thank you. Thank you for coming on, Brandon.